Thank you very much for attending my presentation. It's been about 3 years since I've been to London, so good to see some familiar faces again. I'm going to firstly channel a little bit of boxing analogy because I think it's really appropriate given the space that Hot Chili operates in the copper sector. And I think the latest Rocky movie put it really well. It's not about how hard you hit in this business, it's about how hard you get hit and keep moving forward. So you've got to take a very cyclical view when you're developing large-scale assets, particularly in copper. So I'm going to take you through a little summary of where we came from. So Hot Chili was listed on the ASX back in 2010. Most people are very well aware of the Productora discovery on the coastline of Chile, a very low altitude, very infrastructure-rich project that had a lot of natural advantages, not least of all the location and the infrastructure it was discovered sitting within. We shot to a market capitalisation of $250 million very quickly, the last time that copper price was in this environment. However, at that time we had half the resource base, we had no pre-feasibility, no major partner, and none of that infrastructure access secured. We'll fast forward to now, and on the other side of quite a large depression in the price cycle, we're sitting with a fully dilute market capitalisation of $30 million. We have 1.5 million tonnes and 1 million ounces of gold in resource base against our major copper project. We're pre-feasibility complete with 10 years mine life secured already. And most importantly, we have a major partner sitting alongside us and all of that infrastructure access secured. So what is a really exciting period for the company is now about triggering our re-rate and completing the job which we commenced back all the way in 2011 when we made this discovery, and then for preservation and strategic reasons, ensuring that the company was able to be here for the turn in the cycle. So we see that there is really 3 major triggers to a re-rate of Hot Chili, but most importantly related to the project itself and ensuring that we have very commanding economics and one of the lead development projects in the copper pipeline. So I'm not going to go on about the copper price. I think the graph really shows it all. It doesn't matter what you believe is going on. That history of the copper price is about how you have to drive a business, particularly when you're in the exploration and development space. You can keep running against the trend, but continuing to build your mine life when you've got a rapidly declining share price is not a very good thing for your shareholders. Hot Chili was luckily supported by some very deep-pocketed, very significant major shareholders that have allowed us to be here today and to be pursuing the strategy which aims to build out this project and generate economics which obviously we can leverage off of everything that we've already done and the $100 million that has already been spent on this project. So I'm going to talk about grade. It's something that when you're developing a large-scale project in Chile, often you don't have access to grade. We have a very large-scale 0.5% copper project. It's currently, I think, the 3rd or 2nd lowest capital intensity project in the development pipeline in this space, and that's largely associated with its infrastructure. You can see the photo there. A lot of work has already gone into this project. That mine life needed to be 17 years for the economics to be financeable at $3 a pound copper. What we have been embarking on over the last 9 months is announcing a full consolidation of the area around Productora. Anything within trucking distance of Productora and is owned by some of the small-scale miners currently producing grades of 2 to 5% and delivering them to a very high-cost, very small mill that the government run about 15 kilometres to the north of our main project, now effectively have a partner and a home for a low-cost, large tonnage processing facility that we intend to build in this area. What we are looking to do is build a large-scale production hub and to increase the grade of our bulk tonnage deposit by sweetening it with high-grade ore sources. So this is all about critical mass. It's all about turning Productora from its current near 70,000 tonne per annum copper production profile towards about 100,000 tonnes per annum with about 50,000 ounces of gold. We intend to build that mine life out to 17 years and importantly increase the grade of the feed at Productora. And what that does is some very dramatic things to the economics of the 70% mine life project that we already have constructed. Just quickly on the corporate overview, and you can see the consolidation of our register. These are very, very well known large shareholders. We've been supported by Rick Rule and the Sprott Group from the early discovery phase at Productora, Taurus Funds Management out of Sydney, our own group, Kalgoorlie Group, supported by our chairman, Murray Black, and also the parent company of CMP, one of the Chilean majors. They are the largest iron ore miner in Chile. They're also the largest steel producer in Chile and one of the largest infrastructure businesses in Chile. They're a very important partner to Hot Chili, not least of all because they're 20% contributing partner at Productora, but also because Productora is discovered right in the middle of their infrastructure position in the Huasco Valley and right next to their existing port operations. So, supported by those major shareholders, we currently sit with no debt, a very small treasury that was put together about 6 weeks ago. We went to raise $2.5 million. We had about $6 million put together in a day, and obviously what I'm going to be talking about, which is some of these high-grade ore sources, in particular San Antonio, has certainly turned attention on what may be coming next for Hot Chili. So, with all of that in mind, I'm just going to confirm that drilling got underway about 3 weeks ago, so I'm going to give you the backstory to which we're already 3 weeks advanced on at this moment. So this is the position of the project. 800 metres altitude, sitting right next to the Pan American Highway, 15 kilometres or so south of the township of Vallenar. We sit halfway between two major cities in Chile, Copiapó to the north of about 150 kilometres and La Serena about 150 kilometres south, or for those less familiar with Chile, we're about 600 kilometres north of Santiago on the coast. The yellow project that you see is the toil of some 10 years of my life, 8 years to consolidate Productora, put a major partner in place and mostly secure that infrastructure, which meant that Productora is one of the sub $10,000 per annualised tonne of copper projects in the development pipeline. We have a very, very cheap pipeline to build for water access. It's a saltwater processing ore body. We got very, very good recoveries. In fact, 2% better recoveries using salt water than fresh. But most importantly, you know, sitting next to the major central node of the power grid in the north, sitting 40 kilometres direct to a port that's already built and is a third-party access port that is owned by our partners. Those are the things that ensure that Productora, once it has its mine life, will certainly be one of the lead projects to be built into this next cycle. The new projects in blue are what I've been working on over the last 9 months. So we have secured some family-run operations. They are being mined. Their ore goes to the small government-run processing facility in Vallenar, just to the north. But each of them has the potential to supply what we're targeting, which is about 10% of our 14 million tonne annual throughput on our sulphide plant, about 10% of that to be brought in at about 2.5% copper grade. So it's really a sweetening strategy on the grade, but also we're very clear that we've been working together with the local landowners and parties around Productora to consolidate the entire region. These are the first 3 deals. We're working on a few other deals. One of them that you know, may be transformational if we're able to secure it in terms of mine life extension at Productora. This strategy is really about catapulting the mine life and the grade input in a very short period of time, very cost effectively. So we are looking for low risk assets that we feel we can leverage our knowledge and our current position off of. So just moving into what this means for the economics. So when the lights turn off or the music stops and you're caught with only 70% of your mine life built into your pre-feasibility, your NPVs at your original target target positions are going to be light or south of where they're meant to be. This is a $700 million US project, so you can see that NPV at $3 per pound is very much shy of where it needs to be. Pushing out the mine life from 10 to 17 years gets us to about a plus $700 million NPV on this, and that's about where financing discussions really commence. But adding a 10% blended feed at 5 times your head grade, that does that again. So we're targeting plus 30% IRRs on this project. We're targeting about a 20-year mine life to be put in place, and we're targeting the head grade to move somewhere between 0.7 and 1% just on the copper. We have credits of gold and molybdenum also, of course. So that is what the strategy is about. It's about the economics of this project becoming very robust, but most importantly, also becoming insulated for whatever the market wants to do in the future with the copper price. If we see dips towards $2.20 or $2.30 a pound, we want to make sure that Productora is still robust at that level. I'm going to focus on the projects that we've just secured options over 20 kilometres to the east of Productora. And what does 20 kilometres represent in terms of cost of trucking for something like this? It represents about 0.15% of the copper grade of whatever we can define. So these are mines that have been run for 50 and in some cases 100 years, have had very little, in some cases no drilling completed over them, and are typical family-run operations that really have had no modern exploration or resource definition. We sought partnerships with the locals, almost like blowing a trochus shell and saying, we want you to join us, we want to build a large production centre here in Waianae, and you're finally going to have the ability to get a purchase price and also a small piece of a much larger play. Rather than continuing to supply the local mill and getting about 1.6% of their copper grade removed as a toll treatment charge, they'll finally have the ability to have a low-cost processing option for their mines. So what we asked of these owners was if they gave us 3 years with no costs, no cash payments, no commitments, and gave us the time to assess their properties, then we would obviously agree to a purchase price at the year 4 mark. And what that has allowed us to do is now to move quite rapidly on the exploration. The asset that I'm going to focus on is San Antonio. It certainly turned heads in the Australian market, not least of all because there are a couple of high-grade analogies around, not many, but very, very rare to find a high-grade project like this sitting there that started to shape as something that was a lot larger than what we thought it was initially. And that was a factor of some of the deals that I've done. So San Antonio, this is a mine that's produced about 2 million tonnes at 2% copper, 0.3 gold, and about 17 grams silver. So it's a 2% ore body with about a half a gram gold equivalent credit. What impressed me when I was on the ground was the width of the stopes opened up from surface. 7 to 30 metres width, dipping with the hill, being accessed very shallowly, but an ore body that was meant to have pinched out at 130 metres, or so they suspected. The deal that we have there, as I've said, is to purchase 90% of this asset, but it certainly gives us a 3-year period in which to assess the resource and reserve capability of San Antonio. So this is what it looked like at the beginning. This had never been put into 3D. There had been no mapping of the geology. Codelco had drilled 4 holes back in the late 80s, General Minerals, another 5 holes in the early 90s. We didn't even know whether these holes were effective. Yes, they had got some hits, but it was very hard to put it all into context. So like all modern exploration teams and ResDev groups, we went to work and threw a lot at this over the last 6 months. And what unfolded was quite frankly, very surprising. We looked at the mine footprint, we realised the 400-metre long underground was certainly being mined much more extensively than the information that we'd been able to gain. Part of the deal was also ensuring that the owner of these projects continued to derive a lease income. So we allowed the lease mining teams that were mining this project to continue. We capped them at 50,000 tonnes per annum, a very small percentage of what we're targeting here, and it was what unfolded out of that that I guess has really excited some people. So we mapped the geology. The southern lease miners confirmed about 5 and 6% copper grades coming out of the ground 300 metres to the south of the underground area. The host geology went from originally being apparently an andesite to a diorite host with a porphyry running up its spine. But more importantly, the deposit footprint grew in stages over the last 6 months from 400 metres out to 700 metres and out to about 1 kilometre. This is a sulphide ore body, chalcopyrite bornite from about 8 metres depth. It has multiple lodes on it, in particular 3 lodes, so a footwall lode, a hanging wall lode, and the main lode. The main lode that was developed in the 1968 and 1969 period when this was originally mined, they developed this down to the 90 level, they projected it and developed to 150 level. They drove in, they couldn't find the ore body. They drove even further east, put galleries in, tried to close out the ore body, could not find it. This was an ore body that was meant to have pinched at depth. So about 8 weeks ago, the lease miners got serious, brought in big gear, resurveyed the underground, declined below the 90 level, and effectively found the continuation of the main lode, 20 to 30 metres width, running 2 to 4% copper, currently going through a processing plant now. That was, I suppose, a very big moment for us on what we thought of this particular deposit. Then about a week later, in a filing cabinet in Copiapo in one of the family homes, all of the information we thought was not going to ever be available became available. We brought it all into 3D. We started to see an ore body for its variability in grade, variability in width, and some of the balloon outs to 30 metres width, over 100 metres strike length. With those type of grades were obviously very exciting, particularly since there was no development underneath it. We move down to the 90 level, we see that balloon push about 100 metres to the south. So we start to get an understanding of the distribution of ore plunges and what it will take to actually target this properly. And when we gestate where the miners go and we say, well, instead of 40-degree dip component, 60-degree dip component, and the ore body steepened, we see where they're mining and we see the ineffectualness of that 150 level in grey compared to where the lease miners are mining now in blue. But just to summarise this in one picture, which is always a good thing to have, an aha picture. We started drilling 3 weeks ago. This is the ore body that we're currently assessing, and at the moment, next week, we start drilling the main down plunge continuation of this ore body. So I think over the next 3 months, with the further consolidation of the area that we have in mind, the results coming out of this, that things are about to get very exciting for Hot Chilli, and I do hope that you like our new direction. Thank you very much.